Alright, I'm going to talk very calmly, very slowly, because I really want to convey this message in the most clearest and concise way possible. I'm going to share a true story that I had in the first grade. Then I'm going to tie it to a recent experience that I had during the time that I took a 3-month hiatus from making videos. And then I'm going to tie it all together to share with you a moral and a revelation. Now, before I get into my story, I would like to say to those of us who are just coming into the fold, I know a lot of the things that I have shared and will share will sound crazy, ridiculous, really out there, fabricated, whatever the case may be. That does not mean that it's not true. Of course, those of us who bring forth ideas, theories, concepts, experiences that go beyond the typical framework or construct, of course it's going to sound ridiculous and crazy and impossible. You can go back in history at a time where there were brothers and sisters who were sharing possibilities and experiences and realities that people at the time thought was crazy and impossible, and look at how much we take for granted now, because what was once seen as crazy or impossible is now proven and shown to be a fact and reality, a true manifestation. So I have to preface these things, these stories that I share, because there's still people who are just not getting it. And if it's not processing and it doesn't resonate, you're not ready. It's just go on and move on. And if you want to understand how and why these things are possible, please look at my earlier videos where I give the breakdown on the fact, and even the scientific community is finding this to be a fact, that reality is far more layered, far more expansive and fluid than meets the eye. And there are those of us, for whatever reason, who are able to tap into it at will or spontaneously. So now coming back, I'm sorry I digress, coming back to the story that I want to share with you guys. First grade, I was in bed in between the sleep and wake state. Now when I'm in between the sleep and wake state, my conscious mind, meaning this version of myself, is aware and is very connected to what is going on in my quantum state of awareness, meaning the greater part of me, which we all have a greater part of ourselves, which exists in what I call the quantum field or the quantum lane. Now, in my own innocence, I was having an interdimensional exchange. My eyes are closed. I'm in bed. This is at nighttime. I don't know what time it was. And I'm speaking with my eyes closed to a presence. This presence was light. It was, even though I couldn't open my eyes and see what it was, if you can imagine someone with a flashlight, and I'm just trying to paint the visual in your mind so that you can get an idea of what I'm sharing here. If you could close your eyes and imagine someone with a bright white flashlight and circling the flashlight over your face, over and around your face with your eyes closed. This is a similar effect of what was going on during this particular experience. And then I could feel there was a magnetic pull and pressure going on around me. Now, mind you, this felt very normal and very natural to me. There was no reason for me to feel alarmed at all. Now, as this presence that was near my bed, swirling, spiraling, and I'm feeling the warmth and the magnetic energy and the pull from this energy field or vortex came this male voice, very strong, authoritative type of voice. I was speaking, but I could hear it here and here. It was like there was a telepathic communication, but I wasn't just hearing it in my head. It was like audible as well. Now, I don't recall all of the conversation, but here's what I do recall. I recall calling this energy God. Now, this energy never said that it was God, but I remember calling it God because of how I was conditioned at that time. And I remember asking this presence if it could help me to win a contest that my teacher, my first grade teacher, used to have for us to basically, if we got all of our answers right on our morning math test, we would get a special treat. So I asked this energy if it could help me win to get the treats, which was like cookies and cupcakes. Now, somewhere along the way, the connection was lost. I had fallen asleep, woke up, went to school the next day, and we took our morning quiz or test. And as we wait to see who were the top winner or who actually got all of theirs correct to get the treat. So I was doodling and my teacher came over to me and she asked me what was I drawing. And I remember telling her what I was drawing, and I didn't look up at her. I didn't really engage with her. I was really paying attention to what I was drawing. And then I just innocently said, out of the mouth of babes, "Oh yeah, I talked to God last night." And she said, "Oh really? You talked to God last night?" I said, "Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked to God last night, and I asked him to help me to win the treat today." She was smiling, I remember, she just kept asking me about that. She was really, really feeling what I was telling her, and to the point where she even got one of her colleagues and brought her to me, and she had asked me to tell her what I told her. And I said, "Yeah, God came to me last night and they was asking me what he looked like and what he said and all that kind of stuff." So that was first grade. About 2 months ago, again, different place, different frame of mind, state of mind, a lot more experience. Again, very similar experience, but this time I'm consciously aware from this perspective, but I'm projecting in my quantum state, traveling, astral traveling. Now, when I astral travel, I don't make the decision to move out. It is my greater, higher self that is under the direction of the Almighty. I like to call the Almighty. So that higher part of me, the part of me that has the bird's eye view, that from this perspective I don't have, that level of me is who is moving out. This version of me, or from this perspective, I'm more or less like an observer. It's very difficult to put in words in a way, or put it into an inner or understanding. in a way where those of us who have not experienced this will really get. So I'm perceiving myself, I'm moving through what looked like an Arabic country, and I feel the wind moving around me, and I'm moving at a very fast rate. All of a sudden I hear people like children and women yelling and screaming, and it sounded like they were inside of a structure because I could hear the acoustics. You know, when you're in a cathedral, a hall, or a building where there's little furniture and the acoustics, it had that effect to it, and it caught my attention, and I remember moving, shifting my consciousness back, and here I had this broad view of this Arabic palace that looked similar to this or these examples here. And I hear these people screaming, children screaming, women screaming, and next thing I know, I see them, the front door open up, and I see these women and these children running out. Then I see these men who were in these Arabic garbs like this. There were 3 of them. They were running behind them. Then next thing I know, I see these 3 beings appear larger than life. It was like an overlay. They appeared like an overlay, very much like this. The one on the far left, your left, seemed to be the one that was telepathically sending a message to the person who actually pulled out a gun. One of the guys with this particular being on the left was focusing on, I could hear this being clear as day telepathically telling one of these guys, kill them. And he was speaking in a very strong, masculine, authoritative voice, very menacing voice, like, kill them, kill them, just like that. And next thing I know, the guy pulled out of his pocket a small silver, looked like a Smith & Wesson type gun, and just start indiscriminately shooting the children and the women as they were running. And I'm telling you, my first thought was to just go ham on those beings. And I remember I started from my emotional conscious mind state. I started becoming angry. And next thing you know, I blacked out. I don't know what happened, what I did, but I lost the connection. I'm sharing these 2 experiences with you because it comes back to the many stories that we hear of people who do very destructive, violent things, and they will say that God told them to do that, what they had done, or they heard a voice telling them to do something. When people say these things, chances are they're telling the truth, especially when you have someone who does something so heinous and so destructive that is so far beyond their character. You know, this is one of the reasons why I talk about these things, as crazy and as bizarre as it sounds. When we start connecting the dots and understanding, truly understanding that there are other organisms and life forms that have been evolving long before we have, that would seemingly have supernatural powers and abilities because of how long they have been evolving, who vibrate outside of what we see with our eyes. You start connecting the dots in a lot of ways. You can see how and why the planet is the way it is. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, there are interdimensional forces that are using their psychic ability to influence human behavior. And it seems that they work with certain beings at the very top, meaning those with power, access, money. They work with those of us who are considered at the very bottom of society. But the two commonalities that I found between these two extremes is a weakness, the thing that makes both ends of the spectrum, or people who fall on either end of the spectrum, most vulnerable to this kind of influence, is a weakness. Now, I'm not saying that to be condescending or to put anyone down, but the weakness is, for instance, someone who cares more about money and power, someone who has lust for power and control and dominance. These beings use that as a weakness. They use that being's lust as a connection because their consciousness is broken and cracked and compromised in that state. All right, I felt compelled to add this clarification at this point in this regard. Those of us who are in constant lust and or are highly addicted to mind-altering drugs, promiscuous, loveless sex of any form, which happens to be the quickest and easiest way to create attachments and psychic cords with one who is or has been compromised. And I'm going to do a video about that, sexual attachments, because we need to know about this. Perversions, violence, lying, and blind hatred are definitely among the most vulnerable to their possession and or manipulation. You have someone who's willing to do anything for money, had no care whatsoever for a human life or another's life. When you have someone who is so into violence and they get off on being violent and destructive, someone who is lustful in other ways can be very easily used by these beings. Someone who is not strong in his or her power, or does not know who he or she is, can be easily influenced by these beings because they don't know and they don't understand that there are beings, other life forms around us who can easily pretend to be a Jesus, a God, a Buddha, a loved one who has passed on. These beings have that ability. They're very, very telepathic and very psychic. So just because someone said, God told me this or that, how do we know and how do they know that that is God? Now, when you don't know any better and you hear this voice speaking with authority, or you see this image that comes before you and you don't understand the nature of reality, that there are other life forms who can play with our minds, it's very easy to deceive and fool. You can call them demons, you can call them gods, you can call them extraterrestrials, aliens. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, these are still life forms that are not human. And they are obviously very clever, very intelligent, and very, very calculating in what they do. So this is how and why it's hard for people to wrap their mind around these things when they say, you know, someone saying God told them this or that or whatever, and you know, those of us who've never seen or tapped into these things, it sounds crazy and we just find it to be unbelievable. It's because these beings, they target individuals. They don't work in like a massive group kind of situation where multiple people can witness what is happening, because they work in secret. They work in very subtle ways. And what better way to hide and to deceive? Think about it. So the next time someone says, God told me this or God told me that, you ask them, which God or what God? And how do you know if that was really or the God?